Hello and welcome to News and Views. I'm John Banville. Our guest this week is Senator Joe Robach. Senator Robach, thank you very much for being here today.
Always a pleasure, John, and appreciate the opportunity to chat and let the folks at home know a little bit about what's going on here in the Capitol and some of the things I'm working on.
The state budget is complete. It was done early. It has been hailed as a fiscally responsible document that will help New York State grow jobs. And while that is a big part of what happens in Albany, it's not the only thing that happens in Albany. There are a lot of pieces of legislation, local pieces of legislation carried by individual members that are in the process of being dealt with by the state Senate, whether being moved out of committee or being passed on the floor. Senator Robach, could you tell us a little bit about some of the legislation that you have been pushing and how it affects the people of Rochester and the surrounding areas?
Sure. One of the good things, I've been an advocate for controlling the rate of spending in the budget for years now, and now that we finally put that into law at the state level, also have a control mechanism on local property taxes unless voters overwhelmingly decide to override that at the local level. I've been very happy with those things and been working, but as I said time and time again, the other benefit besides being fiscally responsible and doing the right thing, and I believe in this case, and what the people in upstate New York and Rochester and Monroe County want, is it also gives us a little bit more time to kind of get that out of the way and really focus on some other things. So when you say local bills, there are a lot of things. Literally just today in the legislature, we passed a bill that I've sponsored. Assemblyman Morelli has in the other house in the Assembly, which we've been working in conjunction with the Genesee and High Falls Brewing to get passed for them. And we are trying to do everything we can to work with them. They've been a place, interestingly enough, even in this economy, that's been growing jobs, and they've been taking on, in addition to the Genesee line of products, they've been doing contract brewing for Labatt's, Seagram's, and other places, and literally have been adding both jobs on the plant and jobs for Teamsters and truck drivers who are transporting the product. And the local bill that we did, and I'm glad we had time to get that done and get it passed, really talks to their hauling permit of large amount of beverages, makes it more conducive for them to move their product in a more efficient way, which not only is going to save them money, but I would make the argument by having these full and more larger loads, if you will, of product, it's also going to be a little bit better on the environment, because now instead of having to take several trips, maybe with not full trucks or smaller amounts, this new mechanism, obviously interest to them, will save them money, make them more competitive, which is good for our global economy, but I also believe will have a better impact on the environment as well, and not have as many trucks out there, if you will. So I thought that was a good thing, and glad we could get that done, and I have every hope and belief that that will get passed in the other house as well.
Recently, there was big news with Kodak, and a lot of people are very concerned about what's happening. The Senate has been doing something to help the people affected by the situation with Kodak. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
Yeah, another bill we passed earlier this week. Obviously, I can say the good news and the bad news. Kodak is certainly a company that, to say flagship, it's a name known all over the world, but certainly was great for a lot of families for a long time in Rochester, including my own. I've said it time and time again, I was very fortunate to have a great family, but my Italian grandfather worked for Ridge Construction until they got bought by Kodak in the 60s. They really never had year-round work or benefits. That really helped them tremendously. My dad worked at Kodak, I worked at Kodak, very helpful to our family and establishing us in Rochester when we came here, giving us that opportunity. And while they've gone from almost the high 50,000s of employees down to several thousand, They've still had a great impact on us, and they still employ a lot of people. And more importantly, I believe there's over 25,000 retirees still residing and living in the Finger Lakes area, in the Rochester-Monroe County area. And so as they've gone through this bankruptcy process, downsizing, people were requesting a lot of information and oftentimes not knowing where to go. They would come to our office for assistance or information. We didn't always have that. We were very fortunate that ECRA, Eastman Kodak Retirees Association, was helping get a lot of information out. Panels were set up, a lot of financial planners. We even sponsored one along with a gentleman named George Conboy from Brighton Securities, who put a panel in place of attorneys, medical folks, a lot of people in the know to alleviate the fears and talk about investments, what money was already the employees. And the one thing that came out of that is that what potentially could be greatest risk to the retirees, including my own mother, would be health care. So far, I'm happy to report that has not happened. But in the event that it does, again, I and Assemblyman Morelli, who also has a lot of Kodak retirees and employees in his district, very similar to myself, we put a bill in place which would allow not only a product to be developed, a stopgap product specifically for Kodak retirees, especially those under age 65 and not Medicare eligible, but also have this law which would allow them to be in considered a group health care situation, which will help make that price more competitive and not as high for those people who have to get this, who potentially may have to purchase health care in the interim, depending on how Kodak goes. And so I know that's of great relief to the retirees themselves in that organization, and I know we've been working very closely with a lot of people. I want to especially thank Bob Volpe, who's the president of the Eastman Kodak Retirees, Doug Dobson, Fred Amato, a lot of people who've been working on this along with a large group of retirees to keep them in the know. And the other good thing that they did on their own at the federal level in courts, they're recognized as someone who's acknowledged as being part of this process of what will happen and who's going to be listened to when they continue to go down this road of trying to address their financial concerns and challenges.
It's refreshing because to see that the community pulled together, because Kodak was basically a pillar of the community out there, and the community is still together, pulling together for the people who help.
They are, and we still wish Kodak the best. Now the good news is we've gone from 58,000 employees, I think at the height, down to several thousand, but Kodak's still a big employer, and for the most part, obviously we want everybody that wants to work here to have a good job, but we've absorbed so many jobs, in other places, certainly our colleges and universities, the medical center, healthcare, Paychex, Paytech, a lot of small technology companies are growing and hiring a lot of people. So that part of the story is good. Obviously, we'd love to see Kodak regroup and flourish again and make them as much part, certainly they'll always be a part of the history of Rochester, including my own family, but if they could ever get even half as healthy and employs half the amount of people they did at one time, it would have a tremendous impact on probably making Rochester the healthiest economy in the state. Ironically, even with these challenges, we stack up to the rest of the country reasonably well. But again, if you are the one losing your job, or you're a man or a woman looking for a job, those statistics are insignificant.
I agree. I'd like to shift gears because very often one of the groups that you always have advocated for, whether it be through special pilot programs or securing funding, has been at-risk children and children who are at risk of being victimized. The state Senate has been continuing the fight to protect our children. Can you tell us what's been going on in Albany to keep our children safe?
Certainly, having worked in the public safety department and had the opportunity to work very closely with folks in the sheriff's department, Rochester Police Department, victims groups, I'm probably a little bit more interested than other people in criminal justice laws. But when it comes to our kids, out of all the scope and spectrum of victims, I even get a little bit more passionate about that because they really don't have the ability oftentimes, or the strength, if you will, to protect themselves. So, we've seen this increase in sexual predators, be it the internet or other things, it gets me very concerned. I was very happy to be part of a number of senators who sponsored a package of bills making it a bigger fine if people don't register who are already in the sex offender registry, which seems to be happening more and more, and we need to follow up on that and make sure they're in there. Also for predicate people who prey on our kids, that they can't serve concurrent sentencing. They have to serve consecutive, meaning they're not going to get out earlier because in the event that they maybe have violated more children, like some crimes, they'll say you can serve these consecutively. This would say that they would have to do that one after another to keep them incarcerated longer. I think those things are all very, very important and very, very good. And I would also say this too, like the earlier legislation we talked about, a lot of these came from real situations in Rochester where people's children would get violated and the parents or the grandparents would say to me, Joe, how could this be that there's no law to make this person register where they could move right in this proximity, or that this guy could be out of jail in a relatively short time only to prey on more kids. So they come from us. There's also a bill by Senator Skelos himself, the leader of our House, who increases the penalty for those people who move into a new area who are supposed to get registered and don't register. There's also a bill by Senator Maziarz, also from our region, who says that people can't change their names who have already violated that, so they have a little bit more anonymity to get in there. And Senator Klein has a bill which puts the onus on the violator, this is post-conviction, already convicted, of not only reporting their new residence if they move, but also making sure they're not violating the law by being in that half-mile close proximity to an elementary or secondary school. I think those all make sense to do that. There's also some bills making it more difficult for those people to get certain licensures or have careers where they'll be in close proximity to children as well. It's an unfortunate area, but one we find a lot of repeat offenders. And the trouble with these crimes are these scars on these young people, be they young boys or girls, last a lifetime. So we're trying to crack down on that as well.
Well, Senator Robach, I believe all those bills have been sent to the Assembly.
Correct.
And we will, I'm sure you'll be, letting our viewers know if the Assembly takes them up. But thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you updating us on these issues.
Okay, thanks.
We'll see you soon.